I'm Richard Dugan, and I thank you so much for joining us here on Tell Me Your Story. This is one of those special editions of Tell Me Your Story, and it is Mayhem To Miracles. That's right, it's the third in a series of books of stories, interestingly enough, a compilation. And my guest is Kat Kanavos. I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been a while since you've been on the program. I was trying to figure out how long it's been, and I know it's been like 5 or 6, maybe 7 years.
It is. The first time I was on your show, it was for Surviving Cancerland. Remember that book?
I do. And you now have it Audible, it looks like.
Yes, it was picked up by Blackstone Publishers.
Yeah. And of course, also behind you over, I don't know if it's your left or right shoulder, you have Chaos to Clarity. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then behind you there is Crappy to Happy. I do have to say that when that book came out, and of course we were talking about interviewing the storytellers in that particular book, I thought, I don't know, I'm not sure that title works for me. It's like Crappy to Happy. I mean, certainly each of these 3 books is basically the same thing, from the lows to the highs. Mm-hmm. And I think so far I would have to say that my favorite here is Mayhem to Miracles. It's so appropriate because I think that would be the description that a lot of people would give to what you and I and many others have gone through in what seems now like almost 2 years. Yes. And something that we never thought we would go through. Certainly we look back in history, oh my goodness, what they went through. It's amazing. And yet, here we are. I don't want to say we're through it yet. We're still going through it. Mm-hmm. But I was excited when the pandemic was called and the United States decided to shut things down. I'm saying, oh, thank you for doing something different this time and not doing the same thing. And Einstein's statement about insanity. So I was excited. And you folks, you have just been merrily rolling along, putting out the information. First of all, tell us how, let's start with the series. There are 3 thus far. I'm sure there are going to be more because there are so many stories out there. Good luck finding titles. Just grab your thesaurus. Okay, what else can I say besides mayhem and chaos and crappy? But how did this series get started way back in, what was it, 2017?
Yes, it was way back then. And Ariel and I met through a mutual friend, and we were talking on the phone, and I said, I'd really like, at that time, my book, Dreams That Can Save Your Life, had just come out with Dr. Larry Burke. The 2 of us had written the book, and he was chief of radiology at Duke University Medical. And so Ariel, I believe, had interviewed me, or somehow she heard about it or whatever, and contacted me, and we came up with the idea of doing a compilation book in order to help other authors who were not published and wanted to become published authors live their dreams, become a published author with us, tell their story in a compilation book, and then we would be responsible for promoting it and getting it out there to the world. Their names would be in the back of the book, with their bios. And so it was a win-win situation for everybody. And the first book, Chaos to Clarity, did so well. We were like shocked at how well it did. Then half the book from Chaos to Clarity wanted to come over into Crappy to Happy. And the title for Crappy to Happy just popped into my head one day when Ariel and I were talking. And I said, we just need to come up with another title similar to the first one, because these stories are about people who are in the depths of despair, but we want to show that they found their way out. The hero's journey, our hero's journey, is what we want to celebrate in these stories. And I said, something like snappy, like, I don't know, Crappy to Happy. And then I kept talking, and she goes, wait, stop. Crappy to Happy. I love that. Crappy to Happy. So she tried it on her daughters, and the daughters were like, oh, we love this. And they're millennials. So we figured, well, we'll get this group anyhow that will love our book, Crappy to Happy. And a lot of the authors were going, Crappy to Happy? I don't know if I want to be in a book with that kind of title. But the truth of the matter is, Richard, That book has done great on Amazon simply because of the title. It's still in the top 100. It usually bounces between 20 and number 3 in all of the different categories.
That's and you know, and yes, on the one hand, when you do something like this, you think about it and you go, you want to be optimistic, you want to be positive, all of those things, but at the same time, there's no way to know how it's going to work out. You just don't know. So it's like, I want to be optimistic. I want to believe that, boy, this is going to be a great book for people to to check out. But you never know how it's going to be responded. But here's the thing that I find interesting. The what do I want to say here? The stories that are shared in these 3 books are such that, just like songs that are written about personal events in one's life, okay, they resonate. They just resonate. Now, I have a question for you in regards to these 3 books. Are they yet available in an Audible form?
We haven't done Audible with these books yet. We wanted to make sure that they were going to do really well, and they have. And that's up to Sacred Stories, because Sacred Stories is the publisher. I'm just one of the co-authors, not contributing author, but a co-author with Ariel, who is the publisher. And so when she decides, or if she decides she wants to do Audible, she will. If not, then they may not come out on Audible. But I would love for them to be on Audible, of course. We have a lot of people who can't really read. And that's why my book, Surviving Cancerland, Brookstone Publishing, immediately released it on Audible.
Well, I will tell you that it is probably one of my favorite forms, if you will. I'm sure with a lot of people it is. But what is so fascinating to me is the ability for these people to share their most, I want to say, intimate or personal, or for that matter, sensitive. I mean, I've had several of several of the authors, several of the storytellers on the program here to promote this, and a couple of them actually, you could hear the quiver in their voice. You could actually sense the what do I want to say? You can actually sense the emotion that, and
emotions with
really
the
connect.
memories. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That's true. And there are some of all of the books, I think Mayhem to Miracles has the most, I don't know how to describe it. They're stories that you just aren't going to get in other books. For instance, a story about a little girl being sexually abused by her priest. I mean, where are you going to read that in another compilation book? We just did not hold back in this book. There's stories about sex addiction in this book. We have books about drug addiction in this book. I mean, we did not hold back in this book. When the stories came in, we said, yes, we're going to share them with the world. And so when I was interviewing some of the authors yesterday on my show, Dreaming Healing, some of them started to break down. And so I always start my shows when I'm interviewing the authors from this book with, grab your box of tissues, make sure you have your box of tissues there, because you're going to need them.
Yeah.
And, another story was about one of the authors, Teresa Velarde, when she lost her mother. She was holding her mother's hand as her mother was dying, and she got a glimpse of heaven through her mother's dying eyes. And it was amazing. She was going back to her family, her sisters, her parents, for the big spaghetti party, because they were Italian, and her mother had a big grin on her face. She was so happy to go and be with her family, even though she was leaving this one here.
Yeah. We're talking with Kat Kanavos, and we're talking about Mayhem to Miracles. Mayhem to Miracles is the title of the book. It is published by Sacred Stories Publishing, sacredstoriespublishing.com. Certainly it's available along with the other two. I use the word compendium of stories on Amazon and many other outlets. You can certainly go through sacredstoriespublishing.com to purchase these books. And I am hoping, and I know it will happen, that these books will come out in an audible format so that people can listen, whether it's done by the storytellers themselves, the authors, or a selected narrator, if you will. I just find it incredible, the opportunity, if you will, that has been given to all of these folks to be a part of, what do I want to say here? To be a part of this project. I mean, I know just from my own experience as a first-time songwriter, through a special program that I have been through, and I was graced with that opportunity, that, boy, I'll tell you what, when you start digging into your stories and then the emotions that come along with those stories, and even a song, it's a story, yeah, you really start to put yourself out there. That is not always an easy thing to do, is it?
No, it's not, because you've got to really dig deep down inside. And the honesty that comes out in the story is what resonates with other people and touches their heart. It's from heart to heart, not necessarily mind to mind. And so with music, it's basically a short story put to music, or a song is a short story that rhymes with the most moving words to music. And it's the same thing. It resonates with people's hearts, and it stirs their soul. And that's what these stories do. They stir the soul.
How do you go about choosing the stories that will go into a collection like this? Because you just can't throw any old, hey, I went to the grocery store yesterday, Kat, and I bought a cabbage. Would that be a good story to go into Mayhem to Miracles?
Only if getting to the store was mayhem, your tires all went flat, like Dr. Bernie Siegel talked about in my show yesterday.
Yes.
And thank goodness that they did, because then he missed his plane, which crashed on takeoff. And after, you finally get to the store and get that cabbage, you meet the love of your life and you get married 2 weeks later. That's a Mayhem to Miracles story, all about going to the store for cabbage.
Well, and that is all of the backstory, so to speak, that we don't think about sometimes, and would you say that, granted, I know that you put out the word, hey, we're putting together a new collection in the series. All right, got that. But did you solicit from specific people you knew, hey, we'd really like to hear your story? But they were really, really resistant in that regard?
We did solicit to people that we knew. That's how we started in the very first book over here, Chaos to Clarity. And it got the ball rolling. And then they brought people in once they saw that we were doing what we were doing and how we were doing it. We put the parameters on the website. We wanted a 2,000 word story. And then we do professional editing. I mean, we have a company that we use. Everything is professional. The covers are all professional. Everything is extremely professional. And so we are in contact with our authors throughout the process. So we limited the book to 30 authors. So when we hit that, any more than that was too much for the book. Book gets too big, like 101 is like, that's way too many.
Right.
We just wanted like 30 authors. We had sections in the book. And once we filled those sections, that book was done. And it didn't usually take long at all to fill them up. The longest period of time came from editing the stories, going through the stories would come in. We would decide whether or not, like you said, is this a story that fits? Is there not just the mayhem, but one of the things that make these stories so impressive and so important is coming through the storm. Because, you know, Richard, we are all in mayhem. I mean, being alive, being human, you are in mayhem. But what we want to know is, how did you come through that? We don't just want to know about the mayhem. We want to know about the miracle. Yeah. When did it happen? How did it happen? How did you know it happened? Are you still living it today?
Mm-hmm. No, that, and I have to say that one of the things that I find so intriguing about these kinds of stories is not just coming into the miracle. I remember when I was interviewed by there were three other women, and I found it, first of all, very interesting that of the four of us that you had on your program, mm-hmm. I was the only one that had not submitted a story yet. But what was interesting also was a question that you asked in terms of telling a story of a miracle. And of course, I kind of jumped the gun a little bit, and I said, well, by virtue of the fact that I am here, I'm a miracle. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't said from a standpoint of egotism. It was from a standpoint of, I've made some pretty wonderful choices in my life, which is what it's all about. Going from mayhem to miracles is making choices, which is what we talk about on this program. And if I hadn't made this decision, this choice over here or that one, I wouldn't be here even right now talking to you mm-hmm. about this particular book. And of course, we have no clue as to what the outcome of our choices is going to be. For example, it's the same thing with, as I said at the front end of this program, because we, and I say this collectively, we, as a society, made the decision to shut the country down because of the pandemic. My first thought, of course, was, okay, if we do the things that we are asked to do, and I mean do them, we could be through this in maybe 3-4 months tops, if we would do what we're asked to do. And I will be honest with you, from my observations from back in March, April, May, June of 2020, we didn't. Not enough of us did the right thing. Not enough of us did the things that we were being asked to do to stop this thing. And for a lot of different reasons, which we won't go into. But gee, can you imagine what would have happened if we had? We would have led the world in saying, guess what? It can be done. We can get over this. Which means, and this is what these stories in Mayhem to Miracles talks about, we, you, I, can get through this. And that's really the bottom line message of these books, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. It's, you know, the miracle of this book by itself is the fact that there are so many people out there still in the mayhem going, I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know what to do now that my job is gone, or this has happened, or I've lost my loved ones to COVID, because we have a couple of COVID stories in here. We don't know what to do. We're stuck in the mayhem. These stories are like every single author in the book is reaching down to that person who's on the floor and reaching down to them, taking their hand and pulling them up and saying, this is how I worked through it. You know, James Redfield's story in here is how he wrote the Celestine prophecy. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that how do I get out of this? How do I make this work? How do I move forward? These authors help answer that question. See what I did, see if it'll work for you. Here's my hand from my story. Let's get through this together, because Richard, these books, all three of these books were written during COVID.
Mm. It's absolutely amazing stuff, I will tell you. Folks, get a copy of Mayhem to Miracles. It is put out by Sacred Stories Publishing Company. SacredStoriesPublishing.com is the website. Go to Amazon as well. Put in, you can, as a matter of fact, why don't you go ahead and get all three. Chaos to Clarity, which we did a series of, at that time it was of 12 interviews that we aired during the month of January 2018. Then here we are in 2021, and we're doing the same thing in the month of November. We are featuring 12 authors, including Kat Kanavos, and we are here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. Kat Kanavos is my guest, and I want to ask you, Kat, in regards to Mayhem to Miracles, about your story, the story that you submitted. I mean, you obviously, we all have lots of stories, but which one... First of all, how did you decide which one to put in this particular book, and what was that story?
Well, because this is Sacred Stories of Transformational Hope, I wanted my story to give people hope. And I think one of the things that so many people are searching for in life is the love of their life, especially now after we've been locked down in COVID. Many of us didn't get to see our loved ones. If we had a relationship across the country, we didn't actually get to see them for many, many months. Many people, they weren't able to go out on dates. They weren't able to go out and socialize. They didn't get to meet the love of their life. And they're wondering, they're asking themselves, okay, this has been 2 years. Am I ever going to meet the love of my life? And so the story that I submitted in Mayhem to Miracles is The Face on the Pillow. And the story, The Face on the Pillow, is, I'm a great dreamer. All my books are about dreams. Most of my stories are about dreams. And this story has to do with, as a 9-year-old child in Berlin, Germany, when the wall went up. And my mother was very frightened. All the mothers were frightened. Our fathers disappeared at a red alert overnight to go into East Berlin and try and bring the students back that had gotten trapped over there with the East Berlin police and the Russians. And we were all gathered in my best friend's house. The mothers were all together waiting to get airlifted out, which at the time we couldn't do because the Russians were like, okay, you lift a plane up into the air, we're going to shoot it down with a tank. You're going to be gone. You guys are trapped and we're coming after you. And we were sitting around. I was 8 years old. And one of the mothers said to my mother, Kathy's going to be the first one to get married. This is while we were playing with our Barbie dolls. And my mother said, why do you say that? And the mother said, oh, because she's the cutest, she's prettiest. My mom said to me, Kathy, are you going to be the first to get married? And I said, gosh, no, I'm not getting married until I'm in my late 20s. And they all laughed. They thought that was so funny. Oh, she's so funny. She's 9 years old. She thinks she's not going to get married till her late 20s. And then another mother said, so Kathy, are you going to marry Prince when you get married? Because you're such a little princess. And I said, no, I'm marrying a millionaire. And they all laughed. They thought that was so funny. And my mom goes, what makes you think you're going to marry a millionaire? And I said, because I've already seen him. I've met him. Now they're all stopped because they're thinking, pedophile.
Oh, boy.
And so my mom says, where have you seen him? And I said, he's the face on my pillow. I've seen his face on my pillow in my dreams. I know what he looks like. And they all laughed. They thought that was really funny. But then fast forward almost 20 years on Sadie Hawkins night at a big party, a Sadie Hawkins Day party, in walked the face on the pillow, which was my husband. And we were married 3 years later. And we've been married almost 40 years. So you can meet when it's right. There's someone for everyone. And I think the worst thing that can happen is to belong to the wrong person when the right person comes along. And I was engaged to other people and broke it off. And then when the right one walked in, the face on the pillow, boom, that was it.
Wow. Well, there are also people who have experienced some very interesting things in their lives. I remember my mother asking me some years ago if I had ever had any supernatural experiences. And I said, well, kind of from where I come from, if I have had them, they didn't seem to be supernatural. They were just kind of like, yeah, that's normal. you know? So it's like I can't pinpoint. Have I been blessed with maybe angels coming along in human form, guiding me in a particular direction, encouraging me, supporting me, or maybe just saying, "Hey, it's okay, everything's good. You know, you're doing fine."
Mhm.
If that's been the case, I've not noticed, only because, okay, this is what the universe is putting in before me. Not that I would ever take it for granted necessarily, but it's like it's the way I look at it. For example, Jesus' miracles. To him, it was no big deal. It's just what he did, like walking or breathing. Okay, it's just what he did. So if I've had those experiences, now one of the areas I'd love to talk to you a little bit about as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story is our intuition. You know, we talk on an awful lot and have been since September of 2019 about first the year and then the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, encouraging people to go within, to listen to that still small voice. I want to talk to you about that as we continue here, as we continue talking with Kat Kanavos about Mayhem to Miracles, and it is part of the Sacred Stories Publishing. It's a trilogy right now, so get a copy. There it is right there. We'll also ask you about the book covers as well. We ask you to join us here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you for staying with us here on the program as we talk with Kat Kanavos about her work along with Ariel regarding, and by the way, I have known her for I can't believe how long some of these relationships have been around. I think I've known her for, good Lord, probably a good 20 years, maybe.
Wow.
15, 20 years. So it's really very interesting how all of this stuff works. And so anyway, tell us a little bit about your perspective on the importance especially in the case of, we'll say, Mayhem to Miracles, your intuition and how important that is, especially when you're trying to go from that mayhem or chaos to miracles.
Mm-hmm. I think that when we're in the mayhem and we're trying to make our way toward the miracle, our intuition can be our GPS. And a lot of us, when we're in the mayhem, we don't trust anything, including our miracles. We don't trust anything, our GPS, nothing, because we've been hurt, we've been injured. We don't trust anymore. We've been let down. So I think that one of the important things, another important way to reconnect with that intuition that can be our waking world GPS, is to reconnect with dreams. And I tell people all the time, when we're born onto the earth plane, we're not just dropped down here with no connection to where we came from, which is the heavenly realm. Whether, and I always tell people that say, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in a higher power. I only believe in what I can see, which is me. And I'll tell them, okay, so the next time you have a synchronicity, just know that it's God tapping you on the shoulder, you, the non-believer, so that you know that he really does exist, that there's something bigger than you, that you can't even explain, but he's very much aware of it. So when we're dropped off here on the earth plane as an infant with our family, our new earth family, we've left our family on the other side, we are given an innate gift, and that innate gift is our dreams, our sacred dream doors back to the divine. And those sacred dream doors can actually take us from the waking world through the dreaming world into our divine world to get guidance. We're all born with spirit guides, guardian angels. We're their job, and they take that job very seriously. Some of us see them in dreams. Some of us who don't dream or think we don't dream or don't trust in our dreams may actually come in contact with them during our waking world, our waking hours, as what I call an earth angel. Somebody who just shows up the most important time of our life, gives us advice, or maybe even a turkey for Thanksgiving, and then disappears from our life forever. That's part of our intuition. That's part of what helps us reconnect with that intuition for our waking world that's connected to our dreams, for the divine dreams, the sacred dream doors to the divine, so that we have a path. We visualize our path and we can stay on it because we're all born for a reason. Nobody's just dropped off here. We have a purpose and we need to fulfill that purpose, and our intuition can help us stay on the right path.
Staying on the right path for us is very important, as we are here staying on the right path on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices. We are looking for those new ways of living as well here on Tell Me Your Story. We're finding some of those through the works, the stories of the 30 contributors to the latest work by Sacred Stories Publishing Company, and that is called Mayhem To Miracles, and we certainly hope you'll get a copy of it. Kat Kanavos is my guest here on the program. She's been on the program many times before, along with Ariel, her partner in crime, so to speak, putting out these books that, you better get yourself a big old box of tissues because you're going to need it. Otherwise, you're going to get your book all wet and it's just going to be a mess. You don't want that. It's really interesting how this process begins and moves through, because and I'm curious about how when you share these stories, they change you in that moment, of sharing those stories. They've been in you. You've probably told them verbally to people many, many times.
Mm-hmm.
But when you put it down in print, and I love this one quote, that truth is only truth until it's written down. Because when it's written down, now people start to dissect it. They get into their intellect, the monkey mind, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then they try to figure out, okay, well, what is true and what is false? Is this a myth? Is this actually reality, fact, science, etc.? Which we have a real hard time with these days. Oh, my goodness. And by the way, it's not the first time. I read an article not long ago. People think that this whole thing with I'm going to use the phrase because I don't like the other one, the inaccuracies of information. Okay, how about that one? It takes a lot longer to say than the other short little version, FN. Back in the, I want to say the 11th or 12th centuries, I think. It may have been a little earlier than that. There was actually a propaganda war between the pro and Catholics. There was a propaganda war, an information war. Well, we know who won that war. But it's not, that was, and I'm sure that probably wasn't the first time, but as far as our history, it has happened before, where the dissemination of information. I remember another story that I remember hearing about an eclipse that was coming. And of course, the hierarchy knew that it was coming. But the peasants didn't know. The people, the public didn't have a clue when it came to astronomy. So as the sky began to darken, the patriarchs would say, oh my God, God is angry. You haven't given enough to the church. You need to give more to the church. And so they did. And then, of course, the skies lightened. Mm-hmm. But they had no idea that if they had just waited another hour or so, the skies would have lightened anyway. So people have used various signs and events. And I mean, I worked for a Christian station where every time there was somebody got a hangnail in the Middle East, oh my God, Armageddon! It's the end of the world. Jesus is coming soon. And I just thought, oh, please, I am bored with this story. How can I help can I help move this story along a little faster so we can get onto something that's a little more interesting and exciting? Because this is boring. I still feel that way, that whole scenario. And again, I am not putting, and then I know you feel the same way about when you share. Mm-hmm. What you share, that's for you. That's yours. You're not putting it on anybody else. Let's talk a little bit about this aspect of these stories. Now, I am not going to question any of these authors about the authenticity, the veracity, the accuracy. That, first of all, isn't my place. All right, that's not what I do. I'm not Mike Wallace of 60 Minutes. Because the experiences that they have had, just like you, those are your experiences. I have no right to question or have you justify. Can you talk to us a little bit about your experiences over the years? Because I know there are women in particular, I would like to talk about this, who end up getting diagnosed with a form of cancer, a dis-ease, if you will, that if the doctors had listened to them in the first place, it would have been something benign, taken care of, and it's over. And most of the doctors, well, many are female now, but most of them way back when were male. And most of the science in medicine is male-oriented, statistics and so forth. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, that comes back to your question about intuition. Female intuition. We know when there's something wrong with our bodies. And in my case, I had gone for my physical, and I wrote about it in the other two books as well, but it's really in Surviving Cancerland. That's what that book is all about, how my dreams and my intuitions actually saved my life. Because when I had gone for my mammogram, my physical, my pap smear, the blood test, all the stuff that we do once a year to make sure that we're healthy, I was told, hey, you're healthy. We'll see you in a year. And that's when the sacred dream doors opened. My spirit guides, guardian angels came through and said, no. You have breast cancer. You go back to your doctor without an appointment. And you get a second set of tests. And, we talked about this years ago, Richard. It took me 3 months of constantly going back to my doctors until finally I had the dream where the monk came into my dreams and handed me a feather. Said, you go back to your doctor, because he kept saying, no, there's nothing wrong with you. You're too young for cancer. You're the picture of health. Everything is great. And this monk handed me a feather and said, you go back to your doctor tomorrow and you use this feather to cut through all of his arguments, and you tell him you need exploratory surgery because it's the only thing that's going to show the cancer. And it turned out I was in stage 2 with it in my lymph nodes.
Oh,
and it just shocked him. He couldn't believe it. And it was hard enough getting him to do the exploratory surgery. That feather worked. So, there are aspects of spirit that transcend religion. There's a difference between religion and higher power. There's a difference between religion and God and Jesus and our angels. Religion is man's organization. Our spirit guides, our guardian angels, are God's organization. You can play in man's organization, but don't ever put it above God's organization. God will never steer you wrong. He doesn't have an agenda.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing too, that I found so interesting, and it was a little disturbing to me is when you'd hear these different people talking about what you should and shouldn't believe or what have you, and that if your experience did not match up with the common wisdom, what was in the book, then it didn't happen. And it's like, but this person has already been changed by this experience, and now you're taking that away from them.
Right. Yeah. No, be true to yourself. Be true to your experiences. Stand in your power. Speak your truth. People who are ready to hear it will, and people who aren't won't. And you can't change them. When they evolve enough to accept, then there are a lot of people I've run into who they call themselves devout, who don't want to hear anything about divine dreams. I am not worthy enough to have divine dreams. You are not worthy enough to have divine dreams. Only their religious leader can do that, because that religious leader said God could. And so the rest of you are peons under them. Excuse my French, but that's what you are. Yeah. You're not. You were born with spirit guides and guardian angels. You're their job. They take that job seriously. You signed a contract with your higher power before you were born on what you were going to do. And my contract was to be here on this earth plane during a time when our higher power, our God, was being locked away in a closet and denied. And I was going to show, and science was being worshiped as God. And I was going to show that science goes so far because it's a gift from God, but then comes God. And that's what I have done. Trust in your intuition that you were born with. It's your phone line back to where you came from.
Yeah. Kat Kanavos, my guest here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. This is a series on Mayhem to Miracles. It is the third in a series of books of stories, books of stories. There you go. That is usually what a book is. It's a story of some sort. I don't care if it's an encyclopedia. There are stories in there. And we're talking about the various authors that we've had on the program. Kat is a one of 12. One of 12 people we are interviewing. I'll call you the Mayhem to Miracle Apostles. How's that sound? And
I love it.
You're spreading the word. You are spreading the word. Bernie Siegel is actually one of those, along with yourself. We also interviewed Laura Staley, I beg your pardon.
Mm-hmm. I did it too. I keep calling her Stanley.
I know, and I did everything I could to make sure I stayed with Staley. You know, I did everything I could. Lori Walker is another, as well as Deborah J. Beauvais, which I also
Deborah Beauvais, who owns Dream Vision Radio Network. Yeah,
right. Bernie Siegel. We also had Miriam Ben Salem, as well as Karuna and Ellen Bild. And we also had James Redfield. I love talking with him. And I have to tell you, I wanted to meet this man ever since I read Celestine Prophecy back in the 90s. I actually recorded it myself for my first wife, who was totally blind. I fell in love with that story. I loved the aspect of the old growth forests and the whole aspect of that. We also have Jill Amund Vanderwood on the program as well. We're going to be talking with her as well. And it is Mehdi Boneb.
Right.
Mehdi Boneb. So those are the 12. Those are the 12 apostles. Some of those names are easier to say than others. And I will also tell you too, Kat, that one of my areas that I really, really do try to work on, and I'm not always successful, and I acknowledge that, is I really do try to get the names of our guests correctly, because that's their name. I have to say that the people who worked at Ellis Island, God love them, and my respects to them and all, but they didn't show much respect for the people coming across. They would change the name if they couldn't pronounce it. And I just thought that's not right. But we try to pronounce the names correctly as best we can as we talk here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We're talking about Mayhem to Miracles here on Tell Me Your Story. Kat Kanavos is my guest, and we are in the process of putting together and broadcasting both on the radio, on our podcasts. There'll be a playlist of all 12 of the interviews that we've done, including this one with Kat Kanavos. And then we will also have the videos up on YouTube where you can watch these interviews. And I think that helps people to really kind of get to know an author a little bit more when you can see them and not exactly interact, but still I think that's a very important aspect of it that helps folks to do that. And of course, we always have. Usually it's between myself, the frame of myself and the guest. I have an image of the book. It's there throughout the entire interview so people can remember to get a copy of it. Speaking of the cover of the book, and covers are very important. You have hot air balloons floating along here. Let me ask you about the message, the symbolism, the metaphor that is being put forth through that particular cover, or maybe it's like, just put hot air balloons, no big deal.
I have to credit Ariel with this one, Reverend Ariel, because she's the one that pulled up the hot air balloons, the concept of rising above the mayhem, because there's turbulent waters below where all of our authors are on the cover, and there's a sun finally rising, the golden sun, and the balloons are rising above it. I just wanted to add another thing, Richard. One of the things that makes all three of those books so very special is the fact that Ariel is a reverend, so she's Reverend Ariel Patricia, and my area of expertise is psychology because my degree is in psychopathology. So in all of these books, she writes the psychology, the spirituality of hope, whereas I write the psychology of hope. And at the end of each section, I sum up that section using the psychology that I found within those stories. So there's a juxtaposition between us as co-authors in this book that you don't find every day.
Yeah. Well, I always find it fascinating when I have people who have degrees in the mind and soul sciences, because I sit here going, I wonder if they're kind of doing a little analysis of yours truly over here. And will they give me some insights, that kind of thing. But I just find it fun because I've always considered these programs not only in terms of informing our listeners and entertaining them and hopefully inspiring them. These programs are my therapy. Okay, I have saved tons of money. And that's not to say, don't get me wrong, that is not to say that I'm getting free advice from any of you, okay? That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that through the process of sharing my stories, as I have done even on this program with you, I kind of get that stuff out there. And then another story is underneath there. That's another interesting aspect of it too, isn't it? Is that as we share these stories, as we work through the emotions of we'll just say the trauma, of those stories, the mayhem, okay, we are hopefully able to release, but then there's another story underneath, and it's like as the analogy of peeling away the layers of the onion.
Yes, yes.
And that process, I'm sure you would agree, it may not always be easy, but it is certainly highly beneficial. It's like digging for gold. You don't know that the gold is there. You don't feel like it's there. There is no way there could be any gold here. And the reality is there's gold there, isn't there?
Yes, there is. And that's, I'm so glad you brought that up, Richard, because in this trilogy, there are authors in here that were in all three books. And what they did was they shared their first story in Chaos to Clarity, and they peeled back some of the onion. And then in Crappy to Happy, they offered another story that peeled back even more of the onion. And in this third book, they really peeled the onion. So you can see the thread running through all three stories in all three books.
And that's another aspect of getting to know the authors. I know there are people who read the various books that come out from whoever their favorite author happens to be. And usually, they are, even if it's fiction, all right, you're still getting to know the author because the author cannot escape putting some of themselves into those stories because they're the ones writing it. It's through their filter. And I kind of put it this way, and I don't know, maybe you would agree with this, I hope, but if not, that's okay. We all experience exactly the same emotions. That's what makes us similar. That's what makes us alike. But it's the stories, the individual stories that make us unique.
Yes. And that's one of the things, I often talk about universal oneness, quantum entanglement. We all have those emotions and we feel them at certain times in different depths. But those emotions, some of those emotions are contagious. If you walk into a group and everybody's laughing, what do? You smile. You start laughing. If you walk into a group and everybody's crying and they're sad, what happens to you? You start to get choked up. That's that universal oneness. That's that quantum, that quantum web that we're in that connects all of this whole world together, that quantum spirituality. And so through these stories, we are these stories are the pebbles that are dropped into the pool of gnosis, the pool of life, and those ripples touch everybody on all of the different shorelines throughout the world, because our authors are worldwide. They're not just here in the United States. That's why sometimes it's difficult to say their names, because they come from different countries. So these books are touching people worldwide using quantum spirituality, using universal oneness, because we are all one.
Can't escape that. And yet I have noticed that there are people who want to escape that.
Yeah, it's hard. They're caught in that web of humanity. You can't get out of it.
No, you really can't. And quite honestly, as I've said many times on this program, if the good Lord had intended for us to each have our own individual planet that we would occupy, I am pretty certain, with the vastness, as I have shared, as I have talked with my special co-host, Dr. Sky, Steve Cates, on Mondays on the radio station I work for, called Skyview is the name of the program. I'm sure there are more than 8 billion Class M planets in the universe. But what is the reality? We're all here. And what that says to me from a logical perspective is, if we're all here, that seems to me that we're supposed to work together. You know?
Absolutely. If we were supposed to be by ourselves on our own planets, we wouldn't need males and females.
That too, yes. Kind of boring.
Yeah.
Kind of boring. Kat Kanavos is my guest here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Tell Me Your Story is here Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We hope that you will join us. And we are podcasting on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations across the web. We hope that you will subscribe. Also, go to YouTube where you can watch these interviews. YouTube channel is Tell Me Your Story and Richard Dugan. Just look for the guy with the hat. I did find another Tell Me Your Story channel on YouTube. Make sure that it's the guy with the hat and the logo that says 2020, the decade of perfect vision. And take a listen and take a look at our guests and yours truly, and subscribe. I hope that you can do that. We also hope that you will support the work that we are doing here on Tell Me Your Story. We have a PayPal account. It's for your security as well as ours. And all you have to do when you go to PayPal and you'd like to support us with whatever amount you'd like, they will ask you to put in the email address of the receiver. Well, the email address is richard@richarddugan.com. So easy, richard@richarddugan.com. And then we hope that you will participate in the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, where we encourage you to listen to, as we talked, as Kat has shared with us from her perspective, about listening to our intuition, that still small voice, that higher self, the divine, whatever you want to call it. It will never, ever put you in harm's way. It might challenge you. It's challenged me. My friend has challenged me many times, and more times than I'd care to think of. But it was a heck of a lot better outcome when I got to the other side than if I hadn't followed the prompting. So do me a favor. If you're going to listen, and I encourage you to do so, follow the promptings, and stay with us here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. Kat Kanavos is my guest here on the program, and we are talking about Mayhem to Miracles, which is a book number 3 in the series. There's a part of me that wants to say volume 3, but the series is not. There's no name to it. It's just a collection, 3 books, one right after the other. You don't have to read them in any particular order, to get an insight, not just into the authors and what they've been through, but also maybe they will not only touch your heart, but also inspire you, because maybe you're going through something similar. Tell me about the categories. You have 30 stories, 30 authors, and you have they're broken up into specific categories rather than just thrown together. So someone can go to a particular category and start reading those stories, and they'll all kind of link together.
Yeah, we had fun with these categories. Ariel and I had we had so much fun making these categories. The first one is love and relationships, crazy little thing called love. So those stories all deal with love on some level, although all the stories in the book do deal with love, but the focus is mainly love. In part 2 is health and well-being. I'll stand by you. And so, you've got stories like Reverend Ariel Patricia's Wounds, and Mary Ellen Lucas, A Christmas Gift Mantra. These are stories about health and well-being. And then in part 3, grief and loss, let the circle be unbroken. Those are, my story, Bonfire of the Vanities, where you lose everything. We had a big fire out in California and we lost everything in our condo, burned to the ground, ceiling fell in. All that we didn't lose any lives. My husband wasn't lost. I wasn't there with the cats. We didn't lose our fur babies. What we lost were vanities, stuff. And as long as you only lose stuff, you're a winner. You've lost the stuff, but you're a winner. And then the fourth part, life journey and identity, the long and winding road. And of course, James Redfield is in that one because he certainly does have a long and winding road. And his title is We Are All Chosen. So each of these parts, we kind of put people's stories into these parts, and then the final thoughts at the end of each of these parts is Ariel and I discussing from the spiritual point of view and the psychological point of view, the concepts and the messages within these stories. And there are a lot of reverends and doctors in this book. We've got Dr. Bernie Siegel in here. We've got Dr. Ann Worth. I mean, there are a number of doctors in here who wanted to share their stories of health and healing. We've got COVID stories in here as well.
And there are going to be a lot more, unfortunately.
I think my favorite part, though, Richard, is part 5. Part 5 was actually my favorite part of all the stories because it encompasses all of the authors, and it's called Words of Wisdom. If I knew then what I know now. And so what Ariel and I asked the authors to do is look back over your shoulder and tell us what you learned. And if you had known then what you know now, what would you have done differently? And most of them say absolutely nothing, because this pain was part of the process.
Wow. Now that is like right on. We often I often talk and ask the question about having regrets in one's life. Well, I've heard that word used and then followed up by what a waste of time. Because basically when you regret, if I'm not mistaken of sort of the process, you are saying, if only I could go back and change things so that I wouldn't have this regret. But the downside to that is that if you did, when you got back to the present moment, you wouldn't be the same person.
No. And let's face it, every life needs a little rain because it makes things bloom. And I tell people all the time, it's the mayhem that is what causes miracles to grow. It's the dirt, it's the soil, it's the gunk in our lives that allows the seeds of miracles to grow. And so if we were in constant sunshine, constant sunlight, we'd burn up. And it's that rain that comes into our life that actually washes us. It's washing, healing rain that not only that nourishes the miracles. They grow in the chaos. The chaos is the fertile soil in which our miracles grow. And it's the rain that pours down that actually feeds the miracles. And we need that, or we would just burn up.
Yeah. I'll tell you, this compendium of books, I think is extremely important for anybody, for everybody to pick up a copy. I would start with Mayhem to Miracles because it's the latest work. I think that you'll be touched by it, you'll be inspired by it, etc. And get a copy of this book and read it. Read it to your friends, your family, whoever it is that you want to do that for. But get a copy of it. I think that you will do yourself a great favor and people around you. I have to tell you that I thoroughly enjoy reading and even recording the books that I have over the years, specifically for my first wife, who again was totally blind, and I would record them on cassette. That takes you back, doesn't it? Back to the 80s, and honestly, it's just one of those things that.
You have a great voice for doing that too, Richard. I mean, my goodness, your voice is perfect for audiobooks. But you know what? If you're watching this show right now and you're thinking, what in the world, Christmas is coming up. What better gift than the gift of a book for somebody in their stocking or under their tree that's going to give them joy and hope.
Yeah.
Hope. It's the elixir of life.
This is Tell Me Your Story. Kat Kanavos is my guest, and we are talking about Mayhem to Miracles. This is Tell Me Your Story as well here on this fine station, on the podcast, on the YouTube channel, Tell Me Your Story. We hope that you will watch and listen to and subscribe to, as well as support the work that we are doing. And we thank those who have and those who will. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are eternally grateful for that kind of support. We're also eternally grateful for the support of the various authors, as well as other participants on this program over the last 14 plus years, 14 plus. And I will tell you that as of this broadcast, Kat, I've been posting up on SoundCloud since January 1 of 2018. So we're getting close to the end of quick math, Richard, quick math, 3 years. Like that was hard. And we are, this just blows me away, only because the number keeps going up and up and up. 50,000 listens.
Wow.
And that's in a 3-year period. And in just since July or June, when we expanded to iHeart and Amazon Music and some of the other 8 other sites on the internet, the number of listens since then equals 1 year. 1 year of listens before I put that into place. So thank you to those who are listening and reposting our interviews. Kat, I can't thank you enough for being a part of and having me a part of this incredible series of stories in Mayhem to Miracles, as well as Chaos to Clarity, Crappy to Happy. I look forward to, because I know there's going to be a 4th, okay, and maybe and a 5th, and who knows, this may just be an ongoing series, but again, get that thesaurus out, Kat. You and Ariel will really have to, find just the right words to go from, contrast and comparison here, but that's kind of what makes it fun.
It is. And thank you, Richard, so much for all your help with promoting not just the Mayhem to Miracle books and the Sacred Story books, but all of my books. You've been with me since the beginning, and so you're very special to me.
Well, thank you, and you are very special to me, as is your husband, who has his own, if I'm not mistaken, his own podcast as well.
Yes, he's on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network with me. I've got Dreaming Healing Show, and he's got Quantum Spirituality. He's like out there.
Oh.
His shows are amazing. He's like the professor. He loves it. He's got all the backgrounds and everything. So yeah, his book is going to be published by Inner Traditions and distributed by Simon & Schuster within the next year.
Oh, fantastic. Well, in addition to having him on Tell Me Your Story, I would love to have a conversation with him on his directions and what have you on his podcast as well. That would be a great deal of fun.
We'll make that happen. We'll make that happen, Richard.
Yeah. Well, Kat, first of all, once again, thank you for giving us so much time here on the program. And as always, I do have 3 final questions that I like to ask all of my guests.
Okay.
You may have.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. Give it to me quick.
I can't rip the Band-Aid off just yet because I have to tell our listeners.
Okay.
That this program, Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. One of those could also be Mayhem To Miracles, published by Sacred Stories Publishing Company, sacredstoriespublishing.com, and available, of course, on Amazon and many of the other greater outlets on the internet, and maybe even in your own bookstore. That would be terrific. You could even go there. We have a couple of bookstores here in Santa Barbara. Paradise Found, which is a metaphysical bookstore. I'm sure they could order it if they don't have it. But we also encourage you to listen Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. But don't forget about the 9 a.m. Wednesday edition. It's a special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And then, of course, the podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher Player, FM, Blueberry, iHeart, Amazon Music, and many others, and YouTube, where you can watch these programs. Support what you can here on Tell Me Your Story. We would greatly appreciate anything through PayPal. It's there for your security as well as ours. And then participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, where you go within, you listen to that still small voice, or maybe just be quiet. And maybe more importantly, just be. Just be. And with all of that said, question number 1, who is Kat Kanavos?
Kat Kanavos is the queen of dreams. I believe our dreams are an innate gift and they guide us through our waking world.
Do I have to genuflect now?
No.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you're doing now?
Enlighten people, give them hope, and make them realize that no matter how dark your hour is, the dawn is always coming. Just hang in there like that cat, that poster. Hang in there.
There you go. And finally, what is your life's purpose?
My life's purpose is to share with people that we come onto this earth plane with our own purpose, and that we have guardian angels and spirit guides to help us fulfill that purpose. And until we do fulfill that purpose, we will not die.
Kat Kanavos, thank you so much again. It's been a great pleasure to reconnect with you. And actually, in this particular month for the second time, only because we connected on your program. And we look forward to doing that again very soon.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, you must come back. We're going to do this again. It's fun.
Absolutely.
It was fun.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to love.